This alien girl's strange power made the human flee in terror. Max Thornton wasn't the kind of man to be easily surprised. 15 years spent hauling cargo across the galaxy had taught him to expect the unexpected. Alien cultures, strange customs, and bizarre encounters had become the norm. But tonight, in the dim glow of the cosmic junction, something caught him off guard in a way that nothing ever had before. The bar was as bustling as always, with a mix of species, some humanoid, some barely recognizable as life forms at all. Traders, mercenaries, and tourists filled the spaceport city's watering hole, swapping stories and sharing drinks. Max had been here countless times before, but tonight the energy felt different, charged with something he couldn't put his finger on. He was halfway through his drink when the air seemed to shift. The usual chatter faded into the background as the door slid open. Max's gaze snapped up instinctively. She walked in like she owned the place, tall, graceful, and undeniably alien. But it wasn't just her appearance that froze Max in place. It was the feeling of recognition, the feeling that something big was about to happen. Her skin was an unnatural shade of emerald, glowing faintly under the bar's low lights, like something carved from a precious stone. Her platinum hair shimmered as if each strand caught a bit of starlight. She moved with the fluidity of someone who had never known gravity's hold, her steps sure and deliberate. But it was her eyes that truly captivated Max, dark, almost black, and yet with an intensity that made him feel like she could see straight into him. The crowd parted as she moved through, heads turning to watch her. There was an air of mystery about her, something that made the entire room seem to hush as she passed. Max couldn't look away. He had met hundreds of species in his career, but this was different. Drake, the six-armed bartender who'd seen everything the galaxy had to offer, noticed Max's stunned expression and leaned in with a grin. "You've got an admirer." Max glanced at Drake, then back at the woman, his brow furrowed slightly. "I'm not sure about that." "Oh, trust me," Drake replied with a chuckle. "She's not the type to miss a human." Max ran a hand through his thick brown hair, trying to brush off the feeling that something was wrong. But it was clear now. This wasn't just another night on the job. The woman, who was now making her way to the bar, was unlike any alien Max had ever encountered. She stopped a few paces away and their eyes locked. Without a word, she took the seat beside him. Max could hear his heart beating in his ears. He hadn't been nervous in years, but this woman, she made him feel something strange, something he couldn't explain. "You look lost in thought," she said in a soft, melodic voice, her accent foreign but undeniably alluring. Max blinked, shaking himself out of his daze, just trying to figure out what brings a Nilarian so far from the outer rim. Her lips curled into a smile as though she had anticipated the question. "Research," she answered simply. "I'm a xenobiologist, studying compatibility between species." Max raised an eyebrow. "Compatibility?" "Precisely," she said, her eyes gleaming with something playful. "I've always been curious about humans." Max couldn't help but laugh. "You've come to the right place then. You'd be hard-pressed to find a species more adaptable than ours." She regarded him with a thoughtful expression, as though weighing his words carefully. "Perhaps," she murmured, her hand absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her glass. "But I'm here to find out for myself." The bartender slid a glass of amber liquid across the bar to Max, but his usual appreciation for the drink was gone. All his focus was on this woman, on the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, and the way her eyes never left his. Max shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He was a man who'd seen it all, from the coldest, most hostile planets to the most dangerous encounters with alien species. But sitting here now, next to her, he felt an unfamiliar sense of unease. Not because she was dangerous, but because he had a feeling that this meeting would change everything. "So what exactly are you looking for?" he asked, keeping his tone light, trying to push past the strange tension building between them. She smiled again, this time a little more mysterious. I'm studying human resilience, she said slowly. You see, I find your species fascinating. You've managed to survive, adapt, and thrive across the galaxy. What's your secret? Max took a long sip of his drink, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't the philosophical type, but something about her made him feel like he was being dissected, not just asked about his career. I guess we just don't give up, he said finally. When things get tough, we fight back. Simple as that. She nodded, as though he'd confirmed something she had suspected. Then, leaning a little closer, she said in a quieter voice, "And what about when the fight is unexpected? When it comes from a source you never saw coming?" Max felt a chill run down his spine. The room suddenly seemed colder, the noises of the bar muffled as if the space around them had shrunk to just the two of them. He could feel the weight of her gaze on him, pressing into him like an invisible force. Before he could respond, she stood up, her eyes never leaving his. "I think we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," she said, her voice low and inviting. Max hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. He had known when he first set foot on Port Nexus that he would be facing the usual mix of strange and dangerous encounters. But this was different. He wasn't sure if he was ready for whatever was coming next, but deep down he knew he didn't have a choice. He stood up, meeting her gaze, and without saying a word, followed her out of the bar into the unknown. The invitation. Max had always considered himself a man of action. Whether navigating the treacherous lanes of cargo hauling or getting himself out of tight situations with aliens, he prided himself on his ability to handle anything that came his way. But this felt different. The moment Nayla had stood up, her emerald skin glowing faintly in the bar's low light, Max knew he was no longer in control. Her invitation had been simple enough, but the way she had said it, the quiet, confident promise in her eyes, spoke volumes. Continue this conversation somewhere more private. Max wasn't sure what had drawn him in. Was it her directness, the curiosity in her gaze, or the feeling that there was something deeper at play here? Either way, he followed her without hesitation, through the crowded bar and out into the cool night of Port Nexus. The spaceport city glittered with lights, ships flying overhead like bright stars in a cosmic sea. They didn't speak as they walked, but Max could feel the weight of her presence beside him, every step more deliberate than the last. She led him down a quiet corridor, away from the noise and chaos of the main spaceport. The bustling crowds faded, and soon it was just the two of them, walking in near silence. Max had seen his fair share of alien worlds, from the frozen plains of Furon 9 to the bustling, neon-lit streets of Namur 5. But this felt like stepping into a new kind of world, a world that had nothing to do with planets, ships, or cargo runs. Finally, they reached a sleek residential tower that stood tall and gleaming against the night sky. Nayla tapped her palm on the door and it slid open with a soft hum. The interior was minimalist, everything modern, smooth, and almost too perfect. But there was an odd warmth to it too, a feeling that made Max pause before stepping inside. It didn't feel like a sterile, high-tech apartment, it felt inviting. "Nice place," Max remarked, his voice a little more tentative than usual. He wasn't sure why he was nervous. He'd met countless aliens over the years, had seen all kinds of strange and unexpected things, yet this felt different. Something about Nayla made him feel like he was on the edge of something he couldn't yet comprehend. Nayla glanced back at him, her lips curling into a smile. "Research must pay well," he added, trying to lighten the mood, but she didn't respond with the expected laugh. "My family has connections," she said softly, her tone almost too casual, as though it was nothing more than a fact. She gestured toward the living area, a large window dominating the wall, offering a panoramic view of the city below. Ships streamed in and out of the spaceport, their bright lights painting the night sky in streaks of gold and red. Max stepped inside, his eyes immediately drawn to the view. Impressive. Nayla activated a panel beside the window, and the lights dimmed, the room taking on a warm amber glow. It wasn't cold and sterile. Like Max had expected, it was comfortable, with an atmosphere that seemed to beckon him to relax, to let his guard down. He stood by the window, his thoughts racing. The quiet tension between them was growing with every passing second, and Max wasn't sure what to do with it. She had led him here without a word, without hesitation. He didn't know why, but a part of him felt like he was in the middle of something much bigger than a simple encounter with an alien scientist. "I thought we might have a drink," Nayla said, breaking the silence as she moved toward a cabinet. She returned with 2 glasses, filled with a dark liquid that shimmered faintly in the low light. "Terran whiskey," she explained as she handed one to Max, "a rare delicacy from my home world." Max accepted the glass, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The contact sent a small shiver down his spine. He hadn't been this aware of someone in years, not since. Well, maybe never. "Quite the collection," Max said, gesturing to the smooth, modern Daker, the shelves lined with strange artifacts and data pads. Each piece seemed carefully chosen, arranged with precision. It was the kind of space that spoke of wealth and power, not the kind of place you'd expect from someone who claimed to be a researcher. Nayla took a sip of her drink, her eyes watching him over the rim of her glass. "My family's influence reaches far," she said, her voice low, almost secretive. "But it's not all about power, Max. Sometimes it's about finding something that truly fascinates you." Max looked at her, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to being on the receiving end of such an intense gaze. For the first time, he felt like he was being scrutinized, not just as a human, but as someone of interest. And that made him uneasy. The last thing he wanted was to become part of some experiment. He had enough of those back in his cargo hauler days. "I'm not sure I'm what you're looking for," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Nayla's lips curled slightly. "You're exactly what I'm looking for," she said, her tone so quiet it was almost a whisper. "Humans are fascinating creatures, so adaptable, so resilient. You've survived where others have failed." Max chuckled, though it felt forced. Surviving is one thing, thriving is another. He took a sip of his drink, feeling the warm liquid burn its way down his throat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them thickened, like something unsaid but deeply felt. Max wasn't sure what he had expected from this encounter, but he didn't think it would be like this. Something told him that whatever happened next would push him further into a situation he hadn't prepared for. Nayla set her glass down on the table beside her and moved closer to him. "I'm not just here for your stories, Max," she said softly. "I came here to understand your species, to learn about how you survive, how you love, how you connect." Max's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if he was being pulled into an intellectual conversation or something else entirely. But when Nayla's eyes locked with his, a rush of heat flooded through him. Her words weren't just curiosity, they were an invitation he wasn't sure he could refuse. "I can't promise anything," Max said, his voice quiet, almost a challenge. "Who's asking you to?" Nayla replied, her voice a soft melody, as she placed a hand lightly on his chest. And in that moment, Max realized that whatever happened next, he was already deep in the game, and there was no turning back. The sound of the unexpected. Max Thornton had traveled through space long enough to know that the universe didn't operate on any kind of predictable schedule. In his line of work, the unexpected was always lurking just around the corner, whether it was a cargo mishap, a sudden pirate attack, or a trade deal gone wrong. But nothing had prepared him for what happened next. The night had fallen deeper as Max and Nayla continued their conversation. The warm amber glow of the apartment illuminated her face, making her look almost ethereal. Despite the calming surroundings, Max couldn't shake the feeling that something about this encounter wasn't just unusual. It was unsettling. He wasn't sure if it was the magnetic pull of Nayla's presence, or the fact that he had never met someone who seemed so comfortable with the unknown. He had come to her apartment expecting just another casual conversation, maybe a little flirtation, and then he'd go back to his ship. But now, every word they exchanged felt like it had hidden meaning, and every glance she gave him seemed to ask more than just surface-level questions. Max leaned back on the couch, trying to relax. "So, xenobiology," he began, hopping to steer the conversation to safer ground. "You study species compatibility, huh? That sounds pretty fascinating." Nayla smiled, her eyes still fixed on him. "Fascinating, yes, but also complex. Every species is different. Their biology, their culture, their perception of survival, it all changes how they interact with the world. But humans," she paused, her lips curling slightly, "you're unlike any species I've encountered." Max felt a strange mixture of pride and discomfort at her words. "We do have a reputation for being adaptable." Nayla's eyes darkened with a flicker of curiosity. "Adaptability is a rare quality. Many species lack it. They either evolve too slowly or grow too rigid. But humans, you're different. You change. You survive. But I've always wondered, how far will you go to adapt?" Her voice softened, as if testing him, probing for an answer he wasn't ready to give. Before Max could respond, she moved closer, her slender figure slipping beside him on the couch. He could feel the warmth of her body radiating in the space between them, and yet something about it still made him uneasy. Something in the way she looked at him, like she was assessing him, measuring him against some unknown standard. Max swallowed, suddenly aware of the pounding in his chest. He'd spent years facing danger, navigating chaotic situations and getting in and out of fights. But here now, it wasn't just danger he felt, it was vulnerability. Nayla leaned in a little closer, her lips almost brushing his ear as she whispered, "I want to see just how adaptable you really are." Max felt his heart race as the words sank in. This wasn't just a casual interaction anymore. There was something deeper here, something he couldn't quite explain, something that made his instincts scream to run. But before he could process what was happening, Nayla moved back slightly, a playful glint in her eye. She stood up and walked toward the bedroom door, her movements graceful and effortless. "I think it's time to test that adaptability," she said, her voice low and teasing. "Come with me, Max. Let's see how well you handle the unknown." Max felt a sudden jolt of panic. He wasn't sure what he expected when he'd agreed to meet her, but this was something else. He was beginning to wonder if he had made a mistake, if he had walked into something far beyond his control. But then the sound started. It was faint at first, like a subtle background hum that Max almost ignored, but it grew louder, persistent, and unmistakable. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Max froze, his eyes wide as he turned toward the sound. The noise was coming from Nayla, no, from somewhere in the room, but it wasn't her voice. It was a rhythmic sound, almost like the noise of someone sucking noodles or spaghetti, but different. Max's stomach lurched as his heart skipped a beat. His mind scrambled to make sense of what was happening. He had traveled across countless planets, met alien species with varying forms of communication, but this was something entirely new. Nayla turned toward him, a soft, almost confused expression on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Max opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The noise, the sucking, slurping sound, it didn't stop. It was coming from her. It was coming from inside her. He jumped to his feet, his heart racing, every muscle in his body screaming to run. "What the hell is that?" he asked, his voice thick with fear. Nayla's expression shifted. She tilted her head slightly, as though she didn't fully understand his reaction. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice calm, even though the sound was growing louder now, more pronounced. Max took a few steps back, his mind reeling. He could feel the blood drain from his face. No, no way, this wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. The noise was getting louder now, and the space between them seemed to stretch. Max could see her eyes flicker with something like realization. "Oh," she said softly, You've never encountered that before, have you? Max couldn't speak. He stumbled backward, his mind racing as his feet moved without thinking. What is that? What are you doing? He didn't even recognize his own voice. It was shaky, panicked. Nayla stood still, watching him with a strange expression. It's nothing, she said with an almost amused smile. It's just biology, nothing to be afraid of. Max's breath came in short gasps as he tried to make sense of what was happening. His eyes were wide as he backed toward the door, his pulse pounding in his ears. There was something wrong, something deeply wrong. His mind told him to run, to get out of there as fast as he could. But Nayla didn't move. She just stood there, watching him with those deep black eyes, her expression unreadable. "You're not afraid of the unknown, are you, Max?" she asked softly, her voice almost coaxing. Max's instincts kicked in. His flight or fight response was taking over, and his body was already moving before his mind could catch up. "I need to get out of here," he muttered under his breath, nearly tripping over his own feet. But the sound, the slurping, sucking sound, it followed him. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Max didn't look back. He bolted for the door, heart hammering in his chest, as he ran into the corridor outside. His breath came in ragged gasps, and he couldn't get the sound out of his head. The universe had thrown many strange things his way, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. And as he stood there, half-dressed in the corridor, trying to make sense of it all, one thing was certain. This wasn't just an alien encounter. It was the start of something much, much bigger. Flight or fight. Max's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled down the hallway, his pulse racing in time with the rapid beat of his feet against the cold, metallic floor. He didn't look back. He couldn't. That sound, the slurp, 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 still echoed in his mind, chasing him as he dashed through the corridors of Nayla's luxurious apartment building. He had to get out. His instincts screamed at him to run. It wasn't just the strange noise, or the unnerving realization that Nayla had been the source of it. No, it was something deeper, a primal sense of wrongness that he couldn't shake. Something in his gut told him that what he had just encountered wasn't just biological, it was dangerous. The hallway seemed to stretch out forever as he sprinted toward the elevator. He barely registered the few people who looked at him curiously as he passed. The air felt heavy, charged with an electric kind of tension that made every step feel like a misstep. His mind raced. What the hell just happened? What did I get myself into? He had been on so many crazy missions, so many strange planets, but he had always been in control. There had always been a sense of order. He had understood the rules of the universe, of the cultures he interacted with. But Nayla's world, her biology, it didn't follow the rules. The elevator doors slid open and he didn't hesitate. He lunged inside and pressed the button for the lobby, his breathing still ragged, his body tense with adrenaline. His eyes darted around the elevator, looking for some sign of normalcy, but everything seemed off. The sleek, clean lines of the apartment building's design felt sterile, alien, like it belonged in a different reality. "Just breathe," he told himself, trying to regain control. "You're overreacting. You've seen worse. This is just another strange encounter." But deep down, he knew it was. This was something he couldn't easily explain away. The elevator hummed as it descended, and Max forced himself to focus. He needed to think, to plan. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I misheard it, he thought, but the memory of that slurp, that awful rhythmic noise, kept coming back to him. Maybe she's not what she seems. Maybe she's dangerous. But how? Why me? The elevator dinged as it reached the ground floor and the doors slid open. Max bolted out, not even waiting to see if anyone was nearby. He needed air. He needed space. He needed to escape. He rushed through the lobby, out into the cool night air of Port Nexus. The city stretched out before him, a glowing metropolis with ships flying overhead, the distant hum of machinery and voices filling the night. But none of it mattered now. Max felt like a man on the edge of something he couldn't quite understand, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. "Don't overthink it," he told himself. "Just get to your ship and get out of here." His steps quickened as he walked toward the docking area, his mind still racing. What had he gotten himself into? Who was Nayla, really? Why did she seem so different from anyone he'd ever met? And most importantly, why couldn't he shake the feeling that something much bigger was unfolding, something that went far beyond a simple cargo run? Max reached the docking bay where his ship, the Stellar Drift, was waiting. The sleek craft sat in its designated space, a familiar sight that should have calmed him, but instead the tension only seemed to grow. He stopped just short of boarding the ship, his hand hovering over the ramp controls. A voice echoed in his mind, Nayla's voice, soft and melodic, but carrying a weight of unspoken truth. "How far will you go to adapt, Max?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Max clenched his fists. This isn't just about survival, is it? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft beeping sound from his comm unit. It buzzed with an incoming message, and Max hesitated before answering. He didn't want to deal with anyone right now, but the message was urgent. He activated the device, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. Hank Rogers, an old academy buddy who had settled on Vidian Prime years ago. Hank's expression was grim, his eyes darting around nervously as if he were worried someone might be listening. "Max, you're not going to believe this, but the whole damn place is crawling with them," Hank said, his voice low. "Them? What the hell are you talking about, Hank?" Max replied, his voice still sharp from the adrenaline. "The Narians," Hank said, voice barely a whisper. "I've got eyes on their movements. They're looking for someone they think is a threat. I'm guessing it's you, buddy. You don't want to be around when they get their hands on you." Max froze. Narians. Why the hell were they after him? Had Nayla tipped them off? Was this all part of something bigger? His mind raced, trying to process the sudden shift in events. The Narians were a powerful and politically connected species, and getting on their bad side was a death sentence for anyone, human or alien. Hank's voice cut through his thoughts. "Listen, Max, you need to get out of there. Now, I don't care what you're mixed up in, but they'll kill you if they get the chance." Max didn't need to be told twice. His grip tightened on the comm unit as he stood straighter, his mind clearing in the wake of Hank's warning. This wasn't just about one strange night anymore. He was tangled up in something far more dangerous, something he wasn't ready for but couldn't back out of. "I'm already on it," Max muttered, cutting the connection. He shoved the comm unit back into his pocket and turned toward his ship. His eyes narrowed as he stepped onto the ramp of the Stellar Drift. The door slid shut behind him, sealing him inside. He powered up the engines, the hum of the ship filling the cockpit as he prepared for takeoff. But just as the ship began to lift off, a sudden thought struck him. He glanced out the window at the sprawling city of Port Nexus below, his gut twisting. This wasn't just another cargo run. He wasn't just an innocent bystander in some random alien encounter. Max Thornton had just become a target. And the question now was simple. Could he survive what was coming next? The truth revealed. Max didn't know what he was running from anymore. He wasn't just fleeing an alien encounter gone wrong. It wasn't just the sound that haunted him, nor the sudden realization that Nayla's world was far darker and more complex than he had imagined. No, it was the weight of the unknown. After narrowly escaping the Narians' attention, Max was inside the cockpit of his ship, Stellar Drift, staring out at the streaks of light from the engines as they cut through the vastness of space. His heart was still pounding from the rush, his mind scattered, fragmented by too many questions and too few answers. What the hell had happened? The strange noise from Nayla's apartment, the slurp, 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 echoed in his head like a broken record. But it wasn't just the sound itself that disturbed him. It was what it represented. Whatever Nayla was, whatever she had pulled him into, it wasn't normal. It was alien, yes, but also something deeper. something Max couldn't begin to understand. His fingers hovered over the controls, the ship's autopilot humming in the background. He could have just blasted through the outer system, escaped to a safe distance and put this entire mess behind him. But there was something else, something inside him telling him he couldn't just walk away. The ship's comm unit beeped, interrupting his thoughts. Max grabbed the receiver with a sigh. "This is Max Thornton." It was Hank's voice again, but it was different this time. No longer filled with the usual casual tone of their past conversations, Hank's voice was serious, almost urgent. "Max, you need to know what you're involved in," Hank said, his words cutting through the static of the comm. "This goes deeper than you think." Max leaned back in his chair, staring out into the endless expanse of stars. "Deeper? What could possibly be deeper than the mess I've already found myself in?" "You're not just dealing with Nayla," Hank continued. "You're dealing with an entire political play, one that's been set up for years. Narians don't just go after anyone. They're calculated. This is about more than just research or biology, Max. It's about control." Max frowned, gripping the comm unit tighter. "Control? What do you mean, Hank? She's just a xenobiologist, she." "You don't get it," Hank cut in. "The Narians aren't the type to let someone like Nayla roam free. You think she's a researcher. Maybe, but she's also a diplomat's daughter. Her family's power extends across galaxies. And the real reason she's studying humans is because her people need to understand you. You're part of a bigger plan, whether you like it or not." Max's head spun. "Wait, you're telling me Nayla's family is connected to some kind of intergalactic power struggle?" "Exactly," Hank said. "And you've just been dragged right into the middle of it. It's not just about adaptability. It's about how the Narians believe humans might hold the key to something bigger, something they can use to tip the balance of power in their favor." Max felt his stomach tighten. "What the hell is that supposed to mean? You're telling me I've been part of some galactic chess game without even knowing it?" "You bet," Hank replied. "And the Narians, they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. The slurping noise you heard in her apartment, Max, wasn't a mistake. That's part of her biology. But it's not just that. She's got something else to offer, something much more dangerous. That's why they've been watching her, and you." Max sat up straighter in his seat, his mind racing. Dangerous? He hadn't signed up for this. He hadn't signed up to be a pawn in a galactic game of political power. "Where the hell are you going with this, Hank?" Max asked, his voice tight. "What exactly am I supposed to do now?" Hank's voice softened, almost regretful. "Look, you're too deep in this to back out now. Nayla's not the enemy, Max. She's caught in this mess just like you. But if you don't understand what's going on, if you don't realize the scale of what she's involved in, you could end up on the wrong side of this war." Max took a deep breath, trying to process it all. His head spun with the weight of Hank's words. War. He hadn't signed up for any of this. All he wanted was to do his job, deliver the goods, and get paid. But now he was involved in something that went far beyond cargo runs. "You think I should just trust her?" Max asked slowly, still unsure. "After everything that's happened?" Hank was silent for a moment before answering. "Trust her, but watch your back. There's something you don't know, Max, something big, and if you don't find out what it is, you could end up on the wrong side of the galaxy. She's got enemies, and so do you now." Max's thoughts were a blur. He had been trying to keep his distance, keep things simple, but now he realized he had been blind to the bigger picture. His life had never been simple, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. He was a cargo hauler. He wasn't supposed to be caught in the middle of galactic politics. "All right," Max said, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. "I'll keep my eyes open, but if I'm really in this, Hank, you'd better tell me everything. What do I need to know?" Hank sighed. "Meet me on Vidian Prime. I've got more to tell you. And this time we need to get you answers. The clock's ticking, Max. Don't waste any more time." The comm clicked off, leaving Max alone with his thoughts. He stared at the navigation console, his finger hovering over the coordinates to Vidian Prime. This was no longer just about running from danger. This was about finding the truth and surviving it. Nayla had known more than she let on. The question now wasn't just what she wanted, it was what the galaxy wanted from her. And from him. Max leaned forward, his jaw set with determination. There was no turning back now. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he was damn sure going to find out. And when he did, he'd be ready. The truth was closer than he realized, and it was waiting for him on Vidian Prime. A new challenge. Max sat at the helm of the stellar drift, staring at the glowing expanse of space ahead. The soft hum of the engines filled the cockpit, but his mind was anything but at peace. The journey to Vidian Prime was supposed to be straightforward, just another pit stop in the endless loop of his life as a cargo hauler. But now, it felt like everything had changed. His mind replayed Hank's words over and over. "You're too deep in this to back out now." He hadn't been kidding. Max had tried to distance himself, to keep his head down and focus on the next job, but the universe didn't let you escape that easily. Not when you were caught in the web of political intrigue, not when you were wrapped up in something far bigger than yourself. The door to the cockpit slid open with a soft hiss. Max didn't need to look up to know it was her. He could feel Nayla's presence even before she spoke. "Are we almost there?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with something Max couldn't quite place. Max paused for a moment, letting the silence stretch. "Few hours," he replied. "We'll be landing on Vidian Prime soon enough." She didn't move from the doorway. Instead, she watched him with those unreadable black eyes. "You're not thinking about turning back, are you?" Max finally met her gaze. He didn't answer right away, but his silence was enough of a response. Nayla stepped inside, her movements deliberate and measured. The faint glow of her skin illuminated the dim cockpit, casting a soft green hue against the walls. She was as beautiful as she was dangerous, and for the first time, Max wasn't sure which one he should be more afraid of. "I told you before," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You can walk away from all of this, Max. No one would ever know." Max clenched his jaw, the weight of her words sinking in. He had considered it. Hell, part of him still wanted to turn the ship around and leave it all behind. But he couldn't. Not anymore. The stakes were too high. The Narians, the political games, and whatever hidden power Nayla's family wielded, it was all part of something much bigger than he could ever understand. "If I walk away, I'm just another pawn in their game," Max said, his voice steady, despite the storm of thoughts raging inside. "And you don't get to drag me into something this big and expect me to walk away from it. Not now." Nayla's expression softened just slightly. She moved toward him, her feet silent against the cold floor. "You don't have to be a pawn," she said, her voice barely audible. "You can be more than that. You can be free." Max leaned back in his seat, his fingers gripping the edge of the console. "I don't know if anyone in this damn galaxy is free." Nayla was quiet for a moment, her eyes flicking to the stars outside. The silence between them was thick, filled with the unspoken weight of everything that had happened, and everything that was still to come. Max knew they were both caught in a game they hadn't signed up for, but the rules had already been made. Finally, Nayla spoke again, this time with a hint of frustration in her voice. "I never wanted any of this to happen, Max, but you're in it now, whether you like it or not. You're in this, whether you're a pawn or not. And if you want to survive it, you're going to have to play the game." Max's eyes narrowed, the weight of her words sinking in. "And what's the end game, Nayla? What happens when this whole thing goes to shit? Where do I fit in then?" Her expression hardened, the calm facade slipping for just a moment. "That's what we need to find out," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "And that's why I need you to understand what's coming. The Narians aren't just after you because you're human. They're after you because you're a part of something they didn't expect, and they'll do whatever it takes to control it." Max stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. "Control what? What the hell is going on, Nayla?" Nayla stepped forward, her voice quiet but urgent. My family is involved in something more than just diplomacy. Something far more dangerous. The Narians believe that humans, you might hold the key to something powerful, and they're willing to kill to get it. Max took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. What kind of power? I don't know yet, Nayla admitted, her eyes flicking to the console as if the answer was somehow hiding there. But I have a feeling it's linked to the compatibility between our species. There's something about human biology, the way your species adapts so quickly, that the Narians believe could help them in ways they can't even begin to explain. Max's mind raced. He had always been good at reading people, but Nayla's cryptic words were pushing him to his limits. And what do you want from me? She looked at him for a long moment before replying, I want you to help me figure it out. Help me understand why they're so interested in humans, because the answer could change everything. Max stepped back, his mind spinning. He had been dragged into something he didn't want, and now it seemed like the universe was making sure he couldn't escape. He had a choice to make: stay in the game or walk away. But what if walking away wasn't an option anymore? He turned to the window, looking out at the stars. The journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. We're landing in an hour, Max said finally, his voice a low growl. Then we'll figure this out, but if anyone tries to play me, Nayla, I'm done. She nodded, her gaze serious. I'll make sure you don't get played, Max, but you have to trust me. Max didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. Trust didn't come easy, not when he had been lied to, tricked, and betrayed more times than he cared to admit. But something in Nayla's eyes told him this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it, but he was going to face whatever came next. Because, in the end, the universe didn't care whether you were ready. It didn't care whether you understood the game. It only cared whether you could survive it. And Max Thornton wasn't about to back down. The ultimate decision. Max stared at the vast expanse of stars ahead, his hands gripped tightly to the controls of the stellar drift. The ship was cruising through the outer rim, making its approach to Vidian Prime, but the air felt charged with an electric intensity that had nothing to do with the course plotted on the navigation panel. He was nearing a place that had become more than just a destination. It had become a turning point, a moment that would define everything that came after. He hadn't expected it to go this far. He hadn't expected to be this deep in a situation that, at every turn, seemed to spiral further out of his control. Nayla, her family's dangerous politics, the mysterious power the Narians were hunting. Max had always prided himself on being the one who controlled his fate. But now, it felt like the universe itself was controlling him, pulling him into a game he never chose to play. A sharp beep from the comm unit interrupted his thoughts, and he quickly answered it. Hank's face appeared, looking more serious than Max had ever seen him. Max, this is it. The situation's escalated faster than I expected. You need to get to the safe house now, Hank said, his voice urgent. Max's jaw tightened. What's going on now, Hank? I thought we were still a few hours from landing. You don't understand, Hank continued, his eyes scanning the surroundings nervously. The Narians are making their move. They're already on Vidian Prime and they know you're headed there. They've got eyes everywhere. If you want to survive, you need to move fast. They've already taken control of the docks and the outer districts. The political game, about to go from bad to worse, and you're in the middle of it. Max gritted his teeth. The pressure was mounting, but it wasn't the political threat that gnawed at him. It was Nayla. What the hell does she know that I do? I don't have time for this, Hank. I'm landing in a few minutes. What do I do? Max snapped. You need to trust me, Hank said, his voice steady but full of concern. There's a safe house on the outskirts of the city. I'll send you the coordinates. Get there and don't look back. Nayla's family might have power, but if they think you're just a pawn in their game, they'll dispose of you without hesitation. Max's mind raced. Safe house. Outskirts of Vidian Prime. He knew Hank wasn't joking, but Max didn't know what to do with the truth Hank was giving him. Trust was a word he rarely used, and now it was the only thing standing between him and the chaos that was unfolding. Max looked back at the comm unit. "Fine, I'll head there, but this better not be another one of your damn emergencies, Hank. If it is, I'm not joking, Max, go." Hank's voice was tight, a final warning. The connection cut off with a brief flicker of static, leaving Max in the silence of the cockpit. He glanced at the navigation console, checking the coordinates once more. Safe house. It seemed like the only option now, but a part of him hesitated. What about Nayla? He thought about the way she had looked at him earlier, those dark eyes full of secrets. When she had told him, "You're in this now, Max," she had been right. He wasn't just playing a part anymore. He had become part of the game, and that meant making choices that weren't always easy. The choice wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about who he would become in the process. Max toggled the ship's thrusters, preparing for descent. His thoughts were still jumbled, but the reality was undeniable. The deeper he went into this, the harder it would be to walk away. Nayla wasn't just a scientist or a diplomat's daughter. She was a key piece in something much larger, and whether she knew it or not, her involvement with him had tied him to the fate of not just one planet, but possibly the future of the galaxy. "Damn it," Max muttered to himself. His hands were shaking slightly, but he pushed the feeling aside. There was no time to second-guess himself. Vidian Prime loomed ahead, its sprawling cityscape cutting across the horizon, casting a dark shadow beneath the shimmering stars. Max tightened his grip on the controls, guiding the ship down into the bustling spaceport. His eyes flicked to the readout. The docks were busy, too busy. Too many ships, too many people. He had to move quickly. As he touched down and the ramp lowered, Max's mind raced. Every corner of the docking bay felt like it was under surveillance, and the Narians, no, her people, were here. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, and Max couldn't shake the sense that something or someone was waiting for him. He pushed himself out of the seat and grabbed his jacket, the weight of the decision still heavy on his shoulders. Would he make it to the safe house? Would Nayla be there, or would he find himself walking into another trap? Max paused for a moment, glancing out of the cockpit. For the first time, he realized how alone he really was in this vast, chaotic galaxy. He was trapped between worlds, between the secrets Nayla had kept from him and the dangerous web of power she was entangled in. And the most terrifying thought of all, he didn't know if he would survive this war of politics and power, but he knew he had to try. Max adjusted the collar of his jacket, steeling himself for what was to come. He had a choice now: face the enemy in the shadows of Vidian Prime or run. The truth was, running had never been Max Thornton's style. He wasn't going to run this time, not from Nayla, not from the Narians. Max stepped off the ramp, and as the docking bay doors slid closed behind him, he whispered to the empty night sky, "Let's see what this game really looks like." And with that, he disappeared into the bustling streets of Vidian Prime. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.